But Starbuck was his name, and he rode him 15 miles to the nearest telephone to call him and say, sorry, I just rode my horse to say that I can't come and speak for you because I'm snowed in northwest Montana. And he's like, oh, sure, that happens all the time. Don't worry about it. But, you know, we had real friends that dug you out of a blizzard if you needed it. And it was based on this kind of need for survival. You needed people in northwest Montana. You did. If you got stuck, you needed a few hands to push out. If you ran out of flour, well, you had to go to the neighbor because the store was like an hour down a dirt road. It wasn't really worth it. You know, you needed people because they helped you survive, but they didn't just help you survive, they made life beautiful. People made life beautiful. But you know, things are different now. We don't need people as much as we used to. And it's funny that when you get into a situation where you have to survive, you find that people really come together. You know, you hear stories of these expeditions where people get lost and they have to depend upon each other. And you know if one man gets separated from the group, he's a dead man, right? That's how it goes. You know, just a few years ago, we had that situation with the Chilean workers in the mine, and you know how they grouped together and they made this kind of pact of who did what and who came out first, and they unified and they needed each other. Relationships are a survival skill. They're a survival skill in this battleground, and it's one where we are fast losing. And shouldn't it be this way, that relationships are a survival skill? Because when you think about it, God created us for relationships. He looked at man and he said, it's not good that man should be alone. I mean, every woman knows that, right? It's not good that man should be alone. But not just that. It wasn't just the mutual relationships of humans. God actually created man to be in relationship with him. We were made for relationships. But this is not our mother's battleground. And relationships are harder now. Real ones. Authentic ones. In Ecclesiastes 4:9 it says this, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up, because there are 2. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Relationship is a survival skill. But the rules have changed. Things are different. This is not your mother's battleground. And we are on a battleground. It doesn't take a lot to notice that things are kind of in chaos. So if this is a battleground, and if I was your enemy, do you know what I would do? With a little common sense, a little reasoning, do you know what I would do? I would divide and conquer. That is one of the most effective ways to break down an opponent. Divide and conquer. And do you know how I would do it? It'd be very easy. I'd build a false sense of pride and independence. I'd get you thinking that you didn't need relationships, that you didn't need God, that you'd be better off alone, that one man with his own strength can overcome the world, and I would get you to think that you were enough. I'd get you to be discontent with your relationships and tempt you with better relationships and make you leave your current relationships. And then I would show you what was wrong with the new relationships to make you wish that you had the old relationships. You know what I would do? I would take away real faces and real conversations, and I would give you computer screens and text messages. and it would work. And I would win. How do I know? Because he's already winning. This is not your mother's battleground. This is yours. And you need to know how the game is played. Amen. There's a quote I read the other day on one of my teenage mentees' walls of Facebook walls. She said this: "A wise girl kisses but never loves, listens but doesn't believe, and leaves before she is left." Marilyn Monroe. And I scrolled down after this quote, and I was just appalled at the kind of positive feedback that this quote got. "Oh, you go, girl, that's right." Yeah. Did you tell him that? And I was just overwhelmed with the kind of positive feedback with such jaded and baggage-filled concept of relationships. And I didn't know what to say. Since when what was she smoking? Since when was this a good thing to say and to give as wise advice? And since when did we accept it as such? But then I realized this is not my mother's battleground, and this is, I got some thumping there, I just realized. And good thing I have a stand. And I realized that this is something that has become a part of our culture, so much so that we don't even realize how much it's entrenched into us. There's a few pop culture quotes to illustrate here. "I'd rather die my way than live yours." Lauren Oliver. "I care for myself. The more solitarity, the more friendless, the more unsustained I am, the more I will respect myself." Charlotte Bront. And of course, famous lyrics from a classic song that is widely accepted today is, "I've built walls, a fortress deep and mighty, that none may penetrate. I have no need of friendship. Friendship causes pain. Its laughter and its loving I disdain. I am a rock. I am an island." Don't talk of love. Well, I've heard the words before. It's sleeping in my memory, and I won't disturb the slumber of feelings that have died. If I never loved, I never would have cried. I'm a rock. I am an island. Do you see it? Do you hear it? Our desperado culture. Our independence and our self-sufficiency has been quietly bred while we were sleeping, and this is not my mother's battleground, and I need no man save myself. Now let me clarify. I understand where the affinity to this kind of thinking comes from, especially when it comes from a young teenage girl on her Facebook wall. It comes from one of those heartbreaks where you feel like your nerve endings have been ripped out of your heart and then frozen and then plugged back in for a nice little reminder. Have you ever had one of those? Yeah? Okay, it comes from the pain and the wreckage of what humanity can do to each other and that kind of just awful feeling of vulnerability. That's where it comes from, and I understand that, and I'm not trying to discredit that feeling. But let me tell you this. When we invest in love and in relationships, and when we choose to involve people, we must understand that we also open ourselves up to pain. There will be pain. But let me tell you what. Being tied to oneself has no freedom. And living a life alone brings no joy. We have to be willing to love. There is a death sentence in cold-hearted isolation. Life without love is dead. It is what makes humans humans. It is what makes life richer. If you were to ask me what I would have missed if I hadn't been willing to risk love and hurt I couldn't even tell you. I would have missed the unwavering love of my parents when they loved me even when I did things wrong. And I would have missed the protection and the laughter of my brothers, who annoyed me so much, but who I loved so dearly. And I would have missed the imagination and the anticipation of childhood romance when I used to think about my Prince Charming riding in on his white horse, sweep me off my feet. So much fun to imagine. And I would have missed the day that he did ride in on his white horse, literally, in Montana, and swept me off my feet, even though he did turn me out in the cold 3 months later, broken-hearted at 16. But I would have missed it, and to miss that, no, I wouldn't have missed it. I couldn't have missed it. Never. I would have missed lifelong friendships that I built as a child, the ones that I still fall back on. I'm going to my best friend's second wedding in May in just a little bit, and you know what? Those kind of friendships, yes, there's pain, there's heartache, there's suffering, but there's joy, and I would have missed that. And I would have missed the heady thrill of really just being taken with somebody when you just can't even think of anything else but somebody there in your mind, and everything else gets blurred. And I would have missed that. And I would have missed the pain in the eyes of kids I work with that only love can see. I would have missed so much. I would have missed my wedding day, my friend's funeral, my baptism, the chubby cheeks of my nieces, the broken sobs of a teenager, the breathtaking kicks of little lives inside of me, my baby's first cry, their first steps, their first words, their first owies, late night laughter, early morning smiles, knowledge of the safety of being known by another. I would have missed life. I would have missed life. Would I have missed some pain? Yes, of course. I would have missed that gut-wrenching, breathtaking heartbreak at 16 where I was laying on the floor and my mother's like, Heather, are you okay? I'm like, never gonna be okay. I'm never gonna be okay. I would have missed that, yes. And I would have missed a few tears and a few sad stories. But how could I take any of those things away? How could I take any of those things away and still be the person I am today? And still value the things that I learned through pain? Never, never. We cannot fear love, or relationships, or the loss of it, rather. It is part of life to live and to love and to hurt. There's a famous poem that says, it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. We must love those around us, and we must invest in relationships. It is our duty, and I would like to challenge you tonight that as Christians, relationship is the most solemn of all of our duties as Christians. Authentic relationships. We cannot call ourselves Christians, which means little Christs, until we love. I hate to think what would have happened if Christ, because of fear of pain, had decided not to love us. He knew he would be broken, and he knew he would be hurt, and he knew he would be killed, and he knew that throughout eternity people would reject him. But yet, he chose to love. He invested in people. You can tell me that rejection is imminent. No need to state, I know this. But you cannot live tied to yourself. We must not take that road. We must invest in people. Because life without love is dead. 2 Corinthians 13, 1-3 says this, if I could speak all the languages of earth and of angels, but didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy, and I understood all of God's secret plans and possessed all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains but didn't love others, I would be nothing. If I gave everything I had to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it. But if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing. So enough. Enough with so-called independence. This generation of Christians needs to set aside the failing views of the world around us. This generation of Christians needs to have the courage to go out and love people and build relationships built on Christ. This generation of people, youth, need to be Christ to a world that is hurting. What is going to be the most effective thing? Is it going to be great books, well-planned evangelistic series? No. It's going to be the relationships that you go out and make. That's going to finish the work. And that's going to be the thing that lasts the longest. But you know it's difficult. This is not your mother's battleground. Things are different. And it's hard to build authentic relationships. Honest ones. You see, we have a bit of a problem. In today's culture that is built on profiles and media, we have this problem where we have relationships that are completely built on false realities. Now, I have a Facebook account, and I have to admit that I don't like putting bad pictures of myself on my Facebook because, you know, they're permanently logged in, like, cyber world. And you don't really want, like, the bad picture of you, like, permanently on cyber world. And so I understand this kind of concept of, you know, trying to put our best foot forward. But the problem with this is, and that we need to recognize, is that you can be anybody you want to be when you control the output. And anybody can be anybody they want to be to you. And so you have these entire edifices of false realities where people only let you see what they want, and you only let people see what they want, what you want them to see. Mercy. We have an entire culture of people, relationships that are built on false realities. We've lost the personal touch. And you know, it's interesting. I've heard kids tell me this, and I understand the concept. I've heard kids tell me that they had better, excuse me, the allergies in Florida are also worse than Massachusetts right now. I've heard them say that they have better conversations via text message than they can face-to-face. Kids tell me this. Now, I understand why, okay? Because you actually have like a lag time between like what you get and like what you say, right? So you can kind of like filter it. You can have, and you don't have like all the emotional like that people see. So you can kind of gauge that, and you can kind of filter it back and give it back. So I understand this. But kids tell me that they can have deeper conversations via text message than they can face to face. Now that's nice, but let me tell you something. It's the loss of a life skill. It's the loss of a life skill. We need to be able to have face-to-face conversations to say the harder things face-to-face. You know, I hear about guys like breaking up with their girlfriends via text message. Okay? Girls too, by the way. But this is the kind of culture that we have. That you can't say it face-to-face because you forgot how, because you never knew how to have a real-time face-to-face conversation. This is the kind of culture that we have built. You know, I have a Vespers on Friday night. Every Friday night, kids come into my house, and when they come in the door, I make them turn off their phone. If they don't turn off their phone, I keep their phone. And if they won't give me their phone, I make them leave. So, the reason is this, is because if I don't make them turn off the phone, you know what I see? This is what I see. I see two people talking. And one's on texting, right? And the other one's trying to talk to them. They're like, yeah. and they're having a conversation with somebody that isn't even there. So they're totally unengaged in the conversation that they're trying to have right here. And that is the kind of culture that we have. Have you ever tried to have a conversation with somebody in a text message? Like while somebody is texting somebody else? Yes. It's really annoying, right? It's really annoying. And we have completely, as a culture, and I am to blame as well, I am to blame as well, we have completely, as a culture, lost the human touch. And we have lost a life skill. We need to have a generation of people who are willing to set aside the trends of the modern age. We need a generation of young people who are willing to turn off their phones more, turn off their computers more, and look at somebody in the eyes. We need a generation of people who learn how to read body language and react and counteract and interact with people next to them. Amen. We need a generation of people who are not afraid to say the harder things face to face. We need the human touch back. Not the eye touch, the human touch. We need you to do that. Now is the time for change. It's not your mother's battleground. And it is time to try a little old school communication. I have a challenge for you. I would like to see, you guys are all going to think I'm crazy. I would like to see, and I'm not going to make you do this because I can't, but if I could, I would. But I would like to see this group here choose to have one day without media and technology. Every month. Can you do that? And on that day that you choose, I would like you to be with a friend. And I would like you to have a real conversation. You know, it's interesting. Even when we get together with our friends now, I see this all the time. Even when you get together with your friends, it's totally based on media. You know, Facebook or video games. Video games, oh my goodness, don't get me started on video games. You guys, I mean, you have two people who are totally interacting with something completely removed from them, you know, so they're just like sitting next to each other and like, oh yeah, like an alternate reality, and they're totally like involved in this alternate reality and totally ignoring each other. So on this day without media and entertainment, I want you to see a friend, and I want you to talk to them. And I want you to build life skills. This is a life skill. It really is. Survival of the fittest. We need each other. We have to have the human touch. Turn off the phone. Turn off the computer. One day a month. Give it a try. If it goes well, up it to one day a week. We need you guys to commit to relationships. Real relationships. Flesh and blood relationships. If you don't know how to do it, ask your great-grandmother. She'll help you. We cannot call ourselves Christians until we love. And we cannot call ourselves Christians until we're willing to get dirty in people. There's a simple story of a man who had to verbally call out his disease every time he came into a populated area. Unclean, unclean, unclean. And every time he said it, it reaffirmed in his heart what he felt about himself and how others saw him. And then came Jesus. Amen. A radical. A fearless lover of all mankind, an authentic relationship seeker. And in Luke 5, we find the first interaction that this man had probably had in years with the person who was considered whole. And this man asked for healing. He said, "Lord, heal me." And he asked for physical healing. But Jesus saw the man behind the disease. And he reached out his hand and he put it into rotting flesh. And he looked him in the eye. And he healed him. We need you, young people, to not fear love. We need you to invest in people. And we need you to take people's rotting flesh and say, "Be healed in the name of Christ." We need that generation of young people. That would be a generation of young people that would make Jesus come back. There's a poem I love by Sam Walter Frost. I'm going to read it. It's called "House by the Side of the Road." Let me live in a house by the side of the road where the race of men go by. The men who are good and the men who are bad, as good and as bad as I. I would not sit in the scorner's seat or hurl the cynic's ban. Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. I see from the house by the side of the road, by the side of the highway of life, the men who press on with the ardor of hope and the men who are faint with the strife. But I turn not away from their smiles nor their tears, both parts of an infinite plan. Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. I know there are brook-gladdened meadows ahead and mountains of wearisome heights, and the road passes on through the long afternoon and stretches away to the night. But still I rejoice when the travelers rejoice, and I weep with the strangers that moan, nor live in my house by the side of the road like a man who dwells alone. Let me live in my house by the side of the road where the race of men go by. They are good, they are bad, they are weak, they are strong, wise, foolish, so am I. Then why should I sit in the scorner's seat or hurl the cynic's ban? Let me live in my house by the side of the road and be